Su Yu became famous after he won his first match against Chen Feng. The news had spread among the martial arts training institute in the blink of an eye. Among the silver students, a ruthless figure had appeared and crippled the poisonous widow. "Oh, Brother Su has returned. Please take a seat, little brother will serve you tea." When Su Yu returned to the dormitory, Wusong became a lackey, ready to be at Su Yu's service. He poured Su Yu a cup of tea, continuously complimenting him. Su Yu could tell that Wusong's neck was dripping with cold sweat. Su Yu's victory against Chen Feng had instilled complete fear in Wusong. Su Yu's abilities had increased and he was too lazy to deal with the spineless Wusong, who bullied the weak and feared the strong. "Get out! Stop acting in front of me!" Not only was Wusong not angry, he was overjoyed that things were not as bad as he expected. "Understood, little brother will not bother Brother Su again." As Wusong exited, he wiped off his sweat and his face was full of happiness. Peef. Luckily Su Yu isn't a person to hold a grudge. Otherwise, with his ruthlessness and ability that crippled Chen Feng, I might not even get to sleep in the corridor anymore. Su Yu sat quietly for a while and was deep in thought. I have managed to fight my way up to the top 100 silver students, effectively freeing myself from the predicament of being eliminated in the assessment. However, since Chen Feng is watching me closely, I can't even take it easy. Su Yu was grinding his teeth. He did not have any intention of winning back the feelings of the practical Zhang Xueqing. However, Chen Feng was unwilling to let the matter rest and had tried multiple ways to put him in a difficult situation. This grudge of his, he would one day return to Chen Feng twofold. As such, he must frantically strengthen his cultivation base. It was for his self-protection, as well as to take revenge of what had happened today. Chen Feng, just you wait. Su Yu clenched his fists. Not only had Chen Feng stolen Su Yu's girlfriend, he also wanted Su Yu's life. If Su Yu did not have his revenge, he would forever be a good-for-nothing. However, Chen Feng's abilities or his family background, both were powerful and Su Yu needed to work very hard to strengthen his own abilities. Su Yu, am persistent. At this coming silver assessment, I will put on a dazzling performance. Su Yu had been deep in thought for a long time. He took a deep breath and set an impressive target for himself. This decision was somewhat ambitious. However, even if he had to put his life on the line, he was determined to do it. Time and tide wait for no man. Chen Feng realized that Su Yu had been improving drastically, and he would not sit back and give Su Yu enough time to train. Su Yu's only chance against Chen Feng was to fulfill all his potential like his life depended on it and work very hard to strengthen his own abilities so that he could achieve a new level of martial arts before the next predicament befell him. At the same time, after he had made a name for himself and become a promising talent, he would be valued and protected by the students. This was better than staying as a silver student who was of little significance to the training institute. As a silver student, the training institute would not be concerned whether he was dead or crippled. Wusong, for the next 8 days, I will be going out. If there are any challengers, you shall accept them on my behalf. Su Yu had prepared his food, stepped out the door and headed for the training institute's weapon pavilion. In order to practice the secret book of 100 steps piercing arrow, he needed arrows and a bow. The weapon pavilion was a place built by the training institute to provide weapons for students to train. However, it was similar to the depository of Buddhist scriptures. Every student was entitled to pick one weapon once every year. If students wanted to have a second weapon, they would need to pay 2 taels of silver. Su Yu had never chosen a weapon before. Since the first weapon was free, he was able to save some money. In the training institute, each silver student would receive 1 tael of silver every month to pay for their daily expenses. Hence, they could only save a few copper coins and were unable to pay for anything else. When he entered the weapon pavilion, it was full of people scattered around everywhere. Su Yu took a quick look around the weapon pavilion and found that there were 4 kinds of mainstream weapons: knife, sword, gun and rod. Besides the weapon pavilion having a great number of these weapons, there were also many types of them. There were so many mainstream weapons that Su Yu had to walk into the deepest part of the pavilion before finding a few big bows that were impaired and had traces of dust on them. He did not know whether to laugh or to cry. Su Yu weighed the bows and chose a lightweight bow that had an elastic bowstring and was easy to pull. His body was not very strong. Hence, a bow with a tight bowstring did not suit him. The power of the bow and arrow was dependent on many things. First, the quality of the bow, its material, flexibility, strength and toughness. Second, the bowman's arm strength to determine the range and the speed of the arrow. And finally, the bowman's eyesight. If a bowman possessed very strong and powerful arms, it was no use if he couldn't hit his target. On the other hand, another bowman might have weak arms and his arrow could only travel slowly. However, as long as the arrow hit its target, it would be counted as being more powerful than the previous bowman who shot many arrows and yet missed all his targets. Su Yu's arms were not that strong, but his eyesight was first class. As such, with him, the power of the bow might not be weaker than that of a very muscular man. Suddenly, Su Yu heard a sound which pierced through the silence. When he turned his head to take a look, he found a graceful and beautiful white-shirted lady standing in the empty and spacious weapon pavilion square practicing archery. That square was given to the students who chose bows as their weapon to test the power of their bow. Behind the lady there was a big fellow with a rough face. He was holding a quiver and teaching her archery skills with a smile on his face. "Ah, Miss Shaw, you are naturally gifted, your archery skills are extraordinary. As your instructor, I have nothing more to teach you." The big fellow was an archery teacher. Su Yu had a few impressions of this person. The Martial Arts Training Institute had lessons that taught students how to wield a weapon. Su Yu had seen this instructor teaching some students archery from afar. However, he used to have a very bad temper. He would frequently beat and scold students who were stupid, which was completely different from how polite he was now. Moreover, this teacher's surname was Zhang, and he was brothers with Zhang Zhishi. Su Yu recalled the day when Zhang Zhishi wanted to look good in front of Duke Qin. Without any concern for the pain of his frail body, Zhang Zhishi grabbed him and brought him over to Duke Qin. As Su Yu recalled this scene, he felt unhappy. Su Yu stopped looking at them and started to recall the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow on the spot. Rather than saying this was a cultivation technique, it was better to say that this was knowledge of archery. As such, it was easy to comprehend. Although an hour had passed, in the time turbulence that Su Yu was in, he had been recalling the content of the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow for 10 hours and he was then able to recite it by heart. He looked for a few ordinary iron arrows and went to the shooting area, eager to try out his skills. He took a deep breath and calmed down. He squatted down a little, and was as firm as a rock. This was to reduce the recoil when shooting an arrow, so that the accuracy of the arrow could be increased. One hand was holding the bow, while the other hand placed the arrow on the bowstring. He concentrated all his strength onto both of his arms and held his breath while his eyes focused on the target that was 100 meters away. The essence of the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow was that when shooting an arrow, the practitioner must become one with nature, concentrate deeply and channel all their energy on the iron arrow. This process required the practitioner to harmonize the inner strength within his body repeatedly, so that he could achieve a state of tranquility. At this stage, the practitioner would then be able to concentrate all his energy into the arrow and fire it off without being affected by any forms of interference from the surroundings. When Su Yu released his fingers, the iron arrow made a whizzing sound which pierced through the silence and turned into a fragmentary shadow, striking the target that was 100 meters away. However, Su Yu was not satisfied with the outcome. The arrow had landed on the edge of the target, and it was quite a distance away from the bull's eye. His actions attracted the attention of the white-shirted lady who was engrossed in practicing her archery skills, as well as Master Zhang who was teaching her archery. Master Zhang raised his black eyebrows. "Where did this kid with no manners come from? What do you think you are trying to do when we are practicing archery?" Su Yu had nothing to say. It was obvious the lady was very prestigious. In order to win her favor, Master Zhang did not tolerate anyone who disturbed their practice. However, the target where Su Yu shot his arrow was on the other side of the weapon pavilion square, and it would not affect the lady in any way. "What am I trying to do? I am trying to practice my archery skills. If there were rules that students cannot practice their archery skills here, then I would leave this place immediately." Su Yu was calm and collected. He leisurely took up another arrow and started to aim at the target again. Master Zhang put down the quiver that he was holding and quickly headed towards Su Yu with an angry look on his face. Master Zhang, you need not do anything. Let's continue, said the lady softly. Her voice was soft and delicate, making it pleasant to listen to. As she was talking, her bright eyes shot a glance at Su Yu's posture. She felt that it was strange. Is this your first time practicing archery? As Su Yu was engrossed in practicing archery, he lightly nodded his head and answered her unintentionally without lifting up his head. Yes, this is my first time. The lady smiled and nodded her head. Not bad, you were able to hit the 100-meter target on your first try. Master Zhang looked Su Yu up and down, shook his head and laughed. His posture is no good. He probably only learned the fundamentals and then came here to practice. I guess it's luck that the arrow hit the target just now. Regarding Master Yang's words, the lady decided not to comment. As for Su Yu, he did not hear anything. He remembered the important aspects of the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow. However, he lacked the mastery of all those aspects. Hence, he needed to continue practicing to master those aspects. The second arrow landed on the edge of the target like before, but it was slightly closer to the bull's eye. What? The lady was stunned. With Su Yu's posture, was it really by luck that he actually managed to hit the 100-meter target twice? Each time after, the arrow landed closer to the bull's eye. The lady's face was full of astonishment. The first and second time could be by luck, but if the arrows landed on the target 5 times, how could it still be luck? Moreover, Su Yu's posture became more refined and he started to have a style. Master Yang's rough and black eyebrows started to twitch, and he stared at Su Yu as he continued his practice. Su Yu was wrapped up in his practice. However, from the 5th arrow onwards, Su Yu found it difficult to get even closer to the heart of the target. Any arrows after that landed away from the red heart of the target. At first, he became better as he practiced. His skills indeed improved, but for some reason, he became unable to progress. There was always a distance between the landed arrow and the bull's eye. Instead, there were 2 times that his mind was unsteady and was not focused on the accuracy. However, this confusion actually made him hit the bull's eye. The lady sighed secretly as she thought that she had met an archery genius. Master Zhang was surprised. He laughed a laughter that was secretly filled with contempt. Seems like he is another lecher. He must have known that Miss Shaw liked good archery skills and often came here to practice. As such, he secretly practiced a bit by himself and pretended to be someone new to archery to attract Miss Shaw's attention. There had already been at least 1 or 2 of this kind of people. The lady's eyes, that were as bright as water, lightly shot a glance at Su Yu. She could not help but feel a thread of detest towards Su Yu and went away in a flash. I shall take my leave now, my mind feels unsettled. The white-shirted lady lost interest in him and took light and graceful steps. As she passed by Su Yu, she shot a glance at his bow by accident. She was startled and her face revealed an expression of astonishment. Let me see your bow. The lady's face had a strange expression. When Master Zhang looked in their direction, his face revealed a strange expression as well. Su Yu initially turned his head to glance. However, he realized that the person standing beside him was a very beautiful lady. She looked innocent and gave off the impression that she was indifferent to fame and gain, as though she was a female deity who had no faults. When she walked in this world, she was calm and noble. Any filthy beings that appeared in front of her would melt away. A celestial beauty was what Su Yu could think of to describe her. She was a girl who did not belong with the human population. Looking at her, she was about 14 or 15 years old, similar to Su Yu. She had a pair of bright and snowy eyes which were so clear that they touched the heart of the people. It was as if within the extremely cold weather, a snow lotus, which was rare and difficult to find, had bloomed with a purity that did not belong to the human population. When faced with such a pure and fine pair of eyes that were free of any impurity, Su Yu's mind felt respect for her. She could be seen from afar and one should not be disrespectful to her. Su Yu did not hide the fact that he became absent-minded for a split second. With his deep and bright eyes, which were magnanimous and natural, he gave an apologetic smile. Sorry, please forgive me for being so impolite. This is my bow. The celestial beauty gave off an expression that she was indifferent to fame or gain. She did not mind what Su Yu had done, as she had encountered similar situations, and smiled. The generosity of Su Yu left her with a good impression. In the split second that Su Yu was stunned by her beauty, she could tell that it was the first time he had seen her. He was not a lecher who had an ulterior motive to attract her attention. As the celestial beauty took the bow, her snowy eyes started to look at it. Her smooth and soft hands were like jade and they lightly caressed the bow. Within a short while, her eyes were filled with surprise. Master Zhang went towards them and also looked at the bow carefully. He was also stunned. It can't be. Mister, when you chose this bow just now, no one told you that this is a defective product that had been discarded. The celestial beauty asked in a surprising tone. Those worn-out bows on the table were defective goods. The quality of the material, bowstring, accuracy of the bow and so on, had serious problems and were cast aside, ready to be disposed of. However, it was very strange that the young man managed to use this bow and hit the 100 target 5 consecutive times. With a thread of suspicion, the celestial beauty herself used the bow and shot an arrow. In the end, even with her good archery skills, she still missed the bull's eye. Moreover, the arrow did not even hit the target at all. Su Yu's mind emitted a feeling of shock. Which scoundrel placed the defective goods over there? Try shooting with my bow. The white-shirted lady removed a huge, fragrant, scarlet bow that was hanging on her shoulder. The quality of the bow was commendable. When looked at from afar, the bow not only looked like raging flames, it also looked like a red jade. As Su Yu held the bow in his palms, he could feel a lukewarm sensation that came from the bow itself as well as the residual warmth from the celestial beauty's jade-like hands. This is a good bow. Even though he did not know how to appreciate bows, his instinct told him that the bow he held was good. He looked forward to using the bow. When he tried to pull the bowstring, he realized that the bow did not require a lot of strength and was suitable for a non-muscular man like him or a woman. With great concentration, Su Yu focused all the energy in his body to his arms. He revolved his crystalline pupils to their maximum and could see the 100-meter bullseye clearly. Whiz! A bright, clear and sharp noise pierced through the silence of the weapon pavilion square. Boom! The iron arrow had hit the bull's eye. Moreover, it had hit the most center part of the target which had the size of an eyeball. The power of the 100 feet piercing arrow was just so much. The celestial beauty revealed an expression which showed that Su Yu had met her expectations and she was amazed. Indeed, it was the problem with the bow. You are really amazing. In just half an hour, you transformed from nothing into an expert in 100 feet piercing arrow. Master Zhang was surprised. However, he still felt that Su Yu was a lecher. He thought that Su Yu was already highly skilled in archery and he deliberately pretended to be a newbie so that he could earn the favor of Miss Shaw. However, he could not deny the fact Su Yu was an archery genius, as he possessed the technique of 100 feet piercing arrow at a young age of 14 or 15. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief as he had managed to execute 100 feet piercing arrow. Thank you, Fairy. I will take my leave now. Su Yu needed to speed up his training. As he left, he returned the bow back to the celestial being. Mr. Su, if you feel that this bow suits you, you can have it. In the weapon pavilion, there are no bows that you can choose from as new bows are still being made. The celestial beauty was generous and she laughed quietly, suggesting that she was indifferent to fame or gain. Su Yu was startled. Even though they had never met before, the celestial beauty gave him her precious bow. It was obvious that this bow did not belong to the weapon pavilion, it was the celestial beauty's personal bow. Su Yu muttered to himself, took over the bow from the celestial beauty and thanked her sincerely. Since I borrowed your bow today, I will return it back to you one day. May I know where you stay? When the time comes, I will return your bow back to you. It's fine. This bow belongs to you now. The celestial beauty laughed, indifferent to fame and gain, and took her leave swiftly, leaving behind a delicate fragrance. As Master Zhang could not hold back his laughter anymore. He sneered, "Kid, when something good comes your way, just accept it. There have been many lechers, yet this is the first time that Miss Shaw had given her personal bow away as a present. However, you were still not satisfied and even tried to pay her a visit at her house. Don't waste your time, she is not someone that a person of your caliber can make friends with. Su Yu laughed indifferently. He was too lazy to explain the misunderstanding that Master Zhang had. No matter if it was Zhang Zhishi or Master Zhang, he hated this pair of brothers. Su Yu carried the bow and went to the mountain that he always trained in. However, he did not stop at the usual spot that he always trained at, he continued going deeper into the mountain. The Martial Arts Training Institute was built along the extension of the Twilight Mountains. By passing through the mountain behind the Training Institute, one could enter Twilight Mountains. There were many wild beasts living there. There might even be demonic beasts. The so-called demonic beasts referred to the wild beasts in the mountain which had devoured the universe's miracle mineral plant. Under the influence of medicine, they started to develop intelligence and also become a more superior type of wild beasts. These demonic beasts were extremely dangerous, as not only did they have high intelligence, they were also gifted with impressive abilities. Su Yu entered the Twilight Mountains for two reasons. Firstly, he wanted to increase his abilities by experiencing actual combat. Secondly, he wanted to hunt for wild and demonic beasts so that he could earn silver taels to buy spirit elixirs which could strengthen his body and raise his inner strength. The period before the practitioner could make a breakthrough to level 3 of the martial path was considered as the period to refine one's body, and the practitioner needed to strengthen his body to a certain extent. The spirit elixir was commonly used to refine one's body. As it was made with many kinds of rare ingredients, it was very expensive. A single low grade of spirit elixir cost 100 taels of silver. The Training Institute gave 1 tael of silver every month. By subtracting the cost of daily expenses, there would only be a few copper coins left. As a child that came from a poor family, Su Yu had absolutely no way of coming into contact with a spirit elixir. As for those who had financial support from their families, even 10,000 taels of silver was nothing to them. As for gold students, they would get 100 taels of silver every month. Even though they sit at home quietly and do nothing, they could still get spirit elixirs to allow them to easily strengthen their physique as long as they asked for it. As for me, I still need to go into the deep and old mountainous forest to fight with the wild and monster beasts. Su Yu recalled that in his previous life, it was an age where one had to depend on his father's wealth and prestige to be successful. He did not expect this world to be the same. I don't believe that if I put in 10 times more effort than the rest of you, I won't be able to catch up. Su Yu's heart had a feeling of dissatisfaction. After half a day, Su Yu entered the Twilight Mountains. Hiss, Su Yu could hear a faint noise. Su Yu immediately took precautions and revolved his crystalline pupils to their maximum to take a look around his surroundings. Suddenly, about 10 feet away from him, at a space below a few fallen leaves that was hidden from view, there was a snake that had a color similar to the leaves and it was quietly gliding towards the direction of Su Yu. The snake had dark yellow eyes, a triangular head and was scarlet in color. It was the 7-step poisonous snake that was famous across the world. Ah! Su Yu's silhouette was like a wind, and the shadow of his leg was like a whip. Rustle. The 7-step poisonous snake was like a rope that was sent flying and it fainted after hitting the trunk of a tree. Su Yu leapt towards the snake and took out a small knife which he had prepared. With the small knife, he carefully removed the snake's gallbladder and soaked it inside a wine bag. He then swiftly removed the snake's skin and its poisonous fangs, bundling it meticulously. Lastly, he removed the snake's meat and kept it properly. The snake's gallbladder, skin and poisonous fangs could be sold for around 10 copper coins. As for the snake's meat, it would serve as Su Yu's food. 100 copper coins can be exchanged for a tael of silver. Su Yu was lucky. The moment he entered the mountain, he obtained 10 copper. For the next 5 days, Su Yu leapt through the trees. Just like Cloud Shadow, his movement was agile and natural. It was also as though a duckweed was floating gracefully in the sky, capturing the attention of those who caught a glimpse of it. He revolved his pupils to their maximum, searching for wild beasts that he could kill in exchange for money as he moved. When the night came, Su Yu hid himself in a cave along a small lake. He started a fire outside the cave, deterring wild beasts from approaching it. 2 7-step poisonous snakes, 5 wild rabbits, 2 wild chickens, 3 local chickens, 2 pangolins, 1 wild wolf, 2 wild boars and 1 big golden eagle. Su Yu counted his harvest, and roughly estimated that it could earn him about 1,200 copper coins, which is around 12 taels of silver. Sure enough, experience counts. I was able to earn a year's worth of money that the school would have given me for support within 5 days. Su Yu was satisfied with his returns over the past 5 days. In addition, he was most satisfied with the changes in his body. The shortcut to success is to put one's skills to practice. These words are indeed authentic. He did not feel any fatigue for the past 5 days. Within his realm, he had unknowingly achieved level 2 upper tier of the martial path, which was just a few steps away from level 2 peak. At the same time, he had also achieved stage 3 lower class in universal stroke. His universal stroke used to consist of 4 layers of attack with both his fists and legs. However, as of now, it had increased to 8 layers of attack. When universal stroke was at stage 3 upper class, it would be able to do 16 layers of attack. When it was at stage 3 peak top class, it would be able to do unlimited layers of attack, meaning that the punches and kicks could go on continuously forever until the enemy became unable to sustain himself. There was also good progress for Cloud Shadow. Initially, Su Yu's Cloud Shadow was at stage 1 lower class. However, he had then successfully achieved the realm of stage 1 upper class, which had a speed comparable to someone who was at level 2 peak. Su Yu had also achieved the highest degree of perfection for 100 feet piercing arrow. He was able to hit anything within 100 feet, his archery skills were exquisite and comparable to an archery expert. Su Yu's progress was not only thanks to the abilities of his eyes, it was also thanks to the excellent quality of the scarlet bow, which made the bow easy and convenient to use. I am indebted to the celestial beauty. When I return this bow to her one day, I will definitely repay her. As Su Yu held the scarlet bow, which gave off a warm sensation, his heart was filled with gratitude for the celestial being. Crash! A distinct sound of trees crashing could be heard. It seemed as though a big monster had caused the mountain forest to shake. At the same time, a faint sound of humans could be heard. Su Yu's expression changed. With this kind of phenomenon, was someone fighting with a very strong wild beast. A ray of light shone through Su Yu's eyes. He then extinguished his fire and disappeared into the darkness. For Su Yu, darkness was no different from daytime with the help of his pupils. He activated Cloud Shadow and started to leap between trees. Not only did he look like he had the shadow of the white clouds, he also looked as though he was a duckweed floating in the sky, strange and shrouded in mysteries. After 3 minutes, Su Yu landed on a big tree and hid himself within the thick branches where he could not be seen. When he looked down, he was in awe. Below him, there was a large scarlet python that was so huge and sturdy that Su Yu gasped. The python's body was as big as a water bucket and it appeared much stronger and tougher than Su Yu. Not only that, it also had a head so big that it could completely swallow Su Yu. What truly surprised Su Yu was the fact that the huge python was covered in flames. Moreover, at the areas that the python had been to before, almost all the trees around those areas had been burnt. It is a demonic beast. Su Yu's pupils shrunk. If it were a normal python, why would its body be covered in flames? Only demonic beasts would show this kind of phenomenon. Although this snake was a Category 1 demonic beast, it had extremely frightening abilities. From observation, its abilities seemed semi-matured and it was in a realm that was comparable to a human who had achieved level 3 upper tier. It was a demonic beast that Su Yu had no hope of defeating. The good thing was that below Su Yu, there were 3 people who were fighting against the huge scarlet python. Among the 3 people, the purple-shirted young lady was at the realm of level 3 lower tier, while the petite young lady wearing a light yellow dress and the green-shirt young man was at level 2 peak. The 3 of them worked together and had managed to trap the huge scarlet python. Hurry up! Once we catch this fire dragon, we would be rich. This fire dragon can be sold for no less than 1,200 taels of silver. The petite young lady wearing a light yellow dress was shouting loudly and throwing needles at the huge scarlet python from a safe distance. At the same time, she was also scared and excited. 1,200 taels of silver. Su Yu felt a rush of excitement. That was 10 times the amount of money that he had earned for the past 5 days. However, Suyu was speechless as the 3 people were in a dire situation. The purple shirt young lady and the young bodyguard looked pale as they had expanded almost all their energy. On the other hand, the huge scarlet python which the small child referred to as fire dragon was very strong and powerful. These 3 people had used most of their energy to trap the snake. This was not a good idea, as they might lose their lives. After all, the fire dragon was in a realm of level 3 upper tier. As for the 3 people, the purple-shirted young lady was at level 3 lower tier, while the young man and the petite young lady wearing a light yellow dress was only at level 2 peak. Russell. The fire dragon was intelligent, it seemed to be able to tell that 2 of them were physically exhausted. Its eyes were filled with craftiness. After avoiding the combined attack of the 3 people, it raised its giant tail to a great height. Just like a whip, the fire dragon swung its tail around its surrounding violently. The strength of the giant tail was so powerful it was as though it could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. Upon witnessing this, Suyu felt that he was suffocating. As the purple-shirted young lady and the young man had expanded all their energy, they were unable to avoid the attack in time. At the same time, they spit out a mouthful of blood and were sent flying backwards, hitting a tree and fainting on the spot. The fire dragon was cunning. Rather than taking that opportunity to swallow the 2 persons who had fainted, it opened its big and bloody mouth and threw itself at the petite young lady who was still standing, preventing her from escaping. The petite young lady's expression of excitement froze. At the same time, she was so scared that she turned her body and ran, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Ah! Xiaozi, please save me quickly, it bit me." However, both the purple-shirted young lady and the young bodyguard had fainted. The fire dragon made a beeline for the petite young lady. Sensing a crisis approaching her, in the midst of panic trying to keep the snake away from her, she subconsciously took a silvery white-colored ball out from her sleeve. Bang! A noise as loud as a thunderbolt could be heard. On top of the tree, Suyu's eardrums were ringing. In addition, his inner strength was quivering and he almost fell off the tree. Immediately after that, a great amount of energy exploded, causing his surroundings to shake violently. Hiss! The fire dragon was completely enveloped by the silvery white ball's explosion. At the same time, it gave off a mournful cry. Half of its head was blown off and the remaining half was covered in blood. 7 inches away from the head, a big piece of the snake's scales had come off, revealing its flesh. The intense pain the snake felt had caused it to become more ferocious. It writhed its body crazily and dashed towards the petite young lady. It opened its mouth wide and was about to devour a delicate and lovely small sheep. Suyu secretly shook his head. The power of the petite young lady's silvery white ball was frightening. It was definitely a very expensive life-saving treasure. Under normal circumstances, the explosive power of the ball might even be able to kill someone of level 3 peak of the martial arts. However, the petite young lady was too panicked. 7 inches away from the snake's head was the snake's heart. If she had aimed for that spot just now, the snake would be dead. Seeing that the situation was dire, Suyu took out his scarlet bow, revolved his pupils to their maximum and aimed at the vulnerable spot. There was an injury there that due to the snake's scales peeling off. Aiming at it, Suyu shot an arrow there abruptly. Hiss! The arrow had hit the target. However, it did not penetrate the heart as the snake's flesh was too thick. Even though the arrow had hit the spot, it was still a small distance from the snake's heart. The fire dragon gave another mourning cry. As it endured the pain, it lifted up its head angrily and looked at the human who hid at the top of the tree and shot it. What are you looking at? Evil demon. Suyu's heart felt cold as he had no way to defend himself against a demonic beast, which was at level 3 peak. Without any hesitation, Suyu shot another arrow. This arrow was very accurate and it landed on the tip of the feather arrow that was stuck in the spot. The 2 arrows were joined like a string of pearls. Immediately, the feather arrow went another 3 inches into the snake's meat and pierced the heart of the snake deeply. The fire dragon groaned. It opened up its mouth and spit out a mouthful of a black poisonous liquid. Bits and pieces of the snake's fangs were mixed in the poisonous liquid. Suyu's expression changed and he hurriedly moved his body behind the tree's trunk. Thud! He clearly felt something penetrating the tree's trunk behind his back with sudden force. When he looked back, he saw that the fire dragon was on the floor writhing in pain and it was gradually nearing its death. He only leapt towards the snake after it had completely stopped moving. As for the petite young lady, she seemed to be knocked unconscious from the impact of the explosion. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief and without hesitation he removed the fire dragon's gallbladder, fangs and skin which were worth the most money. After having done this, Su Yu looked at the knife he was holding in amazement. The fire dragon's skin was much harder than expected. He was rejoicing in happiness. Luckily for him, the silvery white-colored ball that the petite young lady used had blasted off the snake's scales at the 7-inch spot, revealing the snake's flesh. If not for that, his arrow alone would be unable to pierce through the thick and sturdy snakeskin. When Su Yu got up and was about to leave, he heard a faint groan coming from behind him. When he looked back, he found that the petite young lady's face was very pale. Her forehead was full of sweat and she was breathing so heavily that her chest was moving up and down continuously. This is not good. She has been poisoned. As Su Yu did a check on her, he found that a piece of the snake's fang, which was covered in the black poisonous liquid, had pierced through her clothes and went into her chest. Before the fire dragon died, it had spit out a big mouthful of poisonous liquid and fangs as a counterattack. The petite young lady had been injured by the fangs, causing her to be poisoned. Without hesitation, Su Yu undid the young lady's clothes. When he examined her, he found that at the right side of her chest, a small piece of fang had pierced through her clothes and skin into her flesh, mixing the black liquid with her blood and contaminating her wound. At the area near the wound, the flesh had started to turn dark brown, signaling that the poison had started to spread within her body. Once the toxin entered her heart, even a supernatural entity would be unable to save her. In such a critical situation, saving the injured person is more important. Su Yu's hands moved as fast as lightning, with his index and middle fingers meticulously removing the piece of fang that penetrated her flesh. Fortunately, the wound where the piece of poisonous fang was as big. Hence, it does not require me to cut open her skin, otherwise there would be a long-lasting scar at that spot. As Su Yu analyzed her wound quickly, he secretly nodded to himself. After which, he squatted down and cleaned off the blood on the top of the wound. He then opened up his mouth and started to suck out the blood which had been contaminated by the poison. As the unconscious young lady was being rescued, she seemed as though she felt the pain and her body was shaking lightly. Su Yu's mind was clear. He sucked out a mouthful of poisonous blood with force and before the poison could enter the blood vessels of his oral cavity, he quickly spit it out. After which, he lowered his head and started to suck the blood out from the wound again. Only after the 6th mouthful of blood, when the color was bright red, did Su Yu stop sucking her blood. At that moment, Su Yu felt that his mouth was a bit numb, as a small amount of poison had entered his blood vessels. However, this was all worth it as the beautiful lady's breathing had stabilized and she was only in a state of unconsciousness, with her life no longer in danger. Su Yu squatted down, covered the beautiful lady with her clothes and left immediately. He felt that by using this method to save the girl, instead of gaining her gratitude, there was an 8 or 9 in 10 chance that his actions would be misunderstood, which might even put his life in danger. After all, that purple-shirted woman was at level 3 lower tier. Moreover, he was in a deserted area. With the beautiful lady's orders, the purple-shirted lady could easily serve as a witness against him. "What are you doing?" When Su Yu was about to leave, that young bodyguard stood up unsteadily and unexpectedly, spotting a stranger moving about sneakily. At the same time, the fire dragon that they were fighting was stripped of most of its valuable parts. The young bodyguard was furious. "Which thief has stolen our war gains?" When he was unconscious, he could faintly hear a thunderous noise. In his mind, he knew that the young princess had used her trump card to kill the fire dragon. However, he did not expect that upon waking up, he would find the young princess unconscious and the most valuable parts of the fire dragon stolen. Su Yu did not turn back. He remained vigilant and made use of the opportunity to tear a piece of cloth to cover his face. After which, he left immediately without hesitation. He did not expect the small amount of poison in his body to take effect, causing his body to become less agile and made him unable to use Shadow Cloud smoothly. "Where are you going?" Making use of this opportunity, the young man at level 2 peak started to chase him. Su Yu turned back and said in a cold manner, HMPH. I was the one who saved all of you. You had better check the state of your partners. The young bodyguard was boiling with rage. Thief! How dare you! You injured my master and stole our prey without saying anything, yet your mouth is still full of lies. Considering that you are at level 2 upper tier of the martial path, how is it possible for you to kill the fire dragon? You are definitely someone who injures others and steals their prey. Take that. Ferocious tiger fist. The young bodyguard jumped into the sky, and just like a ferocious tiger descending from a mountain, threw himself towards Su Yu. Ferocious Tiger Fist was a very powerful medium-level cultivation technique. Compared to Su Yu's universal stroke, it was a level higher. Su Yu was enraged. One does not get thanked for his kindness. Universal stroke, Su Yu's body became agile. He continuously threw punches and kicks in unity at the young bodyguard. A punch and a kick, staggered together like a shadow, maneuvered between one another and landed on the chest of his opponent at the same time. Having been hit by the punch and kick at the same time, the young bodyguard mourned in pain, and his imposing manner, like a ferocious tiger descending from the mountain, disappeared instantly. However, before he could react, another punch landed on the exact same spot. The young bodyguard was both startled and angry. He positioned both his hands in front of his chest. When his opponent stopped his attack for even a moment, he would use that opportunity to counterattack. However, his opponent's staggered punches and kicks continued on, one punch and one kick, landing on the same spot every time. The punches and kicks continued until the last attack, when Su Yu streaked his leg across the air like a fragmentary shadow and the kick landed on both of the arms of the bodyguard fiercely. Ah! The young man could no longer sustain himself. Both his arms were hurting severely, and his body was sent flying backwards about 5 meters, causing his eyes to be filled with astonishment. His opponent was at a mere level 2 upper tier, yet still managed to defeat him. That strange mixed combination of fist and leg cultivation technique was definitely a basic level cultivation technique, yet it had the power to suppress him. The reason Su Yu was able to defeat him was largely attributed to the fact that the young man had been through a tough battle and had used most up of his energy. Combined with the fact that he had just woken up, he was unable to display his true powers. After sending the bodyguard flying with a kick, Su Yu immediately used Cloud Shadow. It was as though he had the shadow of the white clouds and was like a duckweed floating along the river and sea, capturing the attention of those who caught a glimpse of him. He disappeared into the trees. Su Yu had to leave as the purple-shirted young lady with the greatest abilities had woken up. Li Minghai, what happened? The purple-shirted young lady covered her dizzy head, and stood up unsteadily. She had only seen the shadow of a man who sent Li Minghai flying and then escaped hurriedly. With an ugly expression, he exaggerated the situation and explained it to the young lady. The purple-shirted young lady was shocked. However, she was not concerned about the fire dragon. Instead, she was more concerned about the young princess. She went towards the young princess and examined her. When she confirmed that the young princess's life was not in danger, she heaved a sigh of relief. However, as she was meticulous, she discovered that the young princess's clothes were a bit untidy and the bloodstain on the young princess's chest was a sight. Lastly, there were a few mouthfuls of dark red blood as well as a piece of the poisonous snake's fang beside the young princess. The young lady seemed like she had thought of something and her face turned pale. She said in a deep voice, Li Minghai, you are to leave now. When he left, the young lady removed the princess's clothes. After which, she saw the wound caused by the poisonous fang as well as a trace of dark-colored skin, traces of being poisoned. However, the blood contaminated with poison had been removed, and the young princess's life was not in danger. Immediately, as she stared at the markings which suggested that someone sucked out the young princess's blood to save her, her mind started to put together the puzzle pieces. She then instantly understood what happened to the young princess. With signs of anger, the young lady looked in his direction and said coldly, Senior Qin, why didn't you stop him? The young princess's body is priceless, how can she accept the fact that her body had been touched by a man? How can she retain her good reputation? If Duke Shanyu found out about this, he would be as furious as a thunderstorm. Rustle. With a sound of the clothes fluttering against the wind, a wizened old man with a dull expression appeared out of thin air. From the very beginning, this wizened old man had been standing in another tree. However, Suyu did not realize it. This old man's level of abilities was so frightening that no words could describe them. He was a martial arts expert that was secretly protecting the young princess. No matter how hard Duke Shanyu was on his daughter, he would not take risks and allow his daughter, whose abilities were weak, to go into the mountain without any insurance. As such, Senior Chin was a martial arts expert who was secretly sent to protect her, and he would only take action when the young princess was in a life or death situation. Having heard what the young lady said, Senior Chin had a dull face and laughed lightly. The young man was saving the young princess and not harming her. According to the agreement, I can only protect her when she is in danger, otherwise I would not interfere. Anyways, even if I were to take action instead, I could only use that indecent method to suck out the snake's poison. Young lady, would you have preferred this old man use this mouth of his to touch the young princess's priceless body? Senior Chin laughed lightly as usual. The young lady was left speechless. She then bit her teeth. Then, do you remember what that young man looked like? Senior Chin lightly shook his head. No, I do not. That kid's movement was very agile. My angle was not good. From my perspective, I could only see his back view and his silhouette after he disguised himself. The young lady was furious. She could not help but feel worried. We are dead now, Duke Shanyu will definitely be as angry as a thunderstorm. Returning to the outside world, at a town in the Shanyu prefecture, a shadow of light flashed through the people's eyes. Suyu covered his face with a veil and went to a dark alley. In the martial arts training institute, he heard that in the alley, there were black merchants who bought materials that came from unknown origins through illegal sellers. The fire snake's materials were very valuable and could fetch a very good price. However, he understood that if he sold these materials openly, he would get himself into trouble. As the young lady was at level 3 lower tier of the martial path, he could not reveal himself. Old man, do you want materials? Deep inside the alley, when Suyu saw an old man holding a toad-shaped smoking pipe, an idea flashed through his mind. The old man twitched his eyelids and said, "You have found the wrong person. I will sell my illegal materials to you at a cheap price." Suyu's mouth wore a smile. He understood that the old man was being cautious, causing him to be blunt. Suyu then took out a piece of the fire dragon's poisonous fangs. The old man's eyes shone brightly and he spoke with a soft and amazed voice. Demonic beast materials. He was astonished. The young man in front of him was only at level 2, how was it possible for him to kill a level 3 demonic beast? As he thought about the illegal materials, he understood that they came from a questionable origin. Follow me. The old man opened a small, inconspicuous door and brought Suyu into a secret compound. As Suyu could tell that this old man had been buying illegal materials for a very long time, he was not afraid of the old man plotting something against him. Is that really the fire dragon? As the old man with the smoking pipe looked at the 20 meters long gigantic snake skin, his eyes filled with excitement. The old man with the smoking pipe quoted Suyu a price after calculating for a while. For the gallbladder, I will give you 50 taels of silver. For the poisonous fangs, I will give you 100 taels of silver. For this length of snake skin, I will give you 500 taels of silver. The total will be 650 taels of silver. Suyu laughed coldly. Old man, on this bright and sunny day, you have a black and evil heart. Are you not scared that you would be struck by lightning on this sunny day? You are only willing to give me 650 taels of silver for materials that are worth 1,200 taels. If that is the case, then I will look for other people. Within the Shanyu prefecture, there are many others that are willing to buy illegal materials and not just you alone. The old man with the smoking pipe was ashamed. Suyu was a guy that knew the ropes. 900 taels of silver. Deal. The old man quoted a black market price. Suyu thought to himself, from 1,200 taels of silver, the price had dropped by 25% and it was not worth it. However, these were the prices in a black market. Deal. However, you have to give me a bit of the snake skin as I want to make armor out of it. Suyu's eyes were filled with wisdom as he tried to bargain with the old man. The head of the old man shook his head as though it was a rattle drum. No way. That would be too much of a loss for me. Su Yu smiled and said, how about if I bought a few spirit elixirs from you? This way, you would not take any losses. The spirit elixirs sold by black merchant were 10% cheaper than the market price. For a low-grade spirit elixir, it would cost 100 taels of silver in the normal market. However, it would only cost 90 taels of silver here. It was a good that one could not find easily. Silver students came here regularly to buy the cheaper spirit elixirs. The eyes of the old man with the smoking pipe shone brightly. How many spirit elixirs do you want? 3 low-grade and 1 middle-grade. Su Yu said. For a middle-grade spirit elixir, it would cost 500 taels of silver normally. But here, it would only cost him 450 taels of silver. Combined with the 4 low-grade spirit elixirs, the total cost will be just 900 taels of silver. Haha. Deal. The old man took out 2 jade bottles, filled with low-grade and middle-grade spirit elixirs respectively. After confirming that the spirit elixirs were real, Su Yu removed a length of the snake skin and left. Right before he left, the eyes of the old man shone brightly and gave Su Yu a token. Haha, kid, old man likes people like you who are straightforward. Take this token, go to the town's biggest Dongolin artisan shop and look for Master Zhang Zi, he will make you the perfect armor. Take it as an additional reward from this old man. When you have first-class goods, please sell it to me again in the future. The old man smiled and closed the door. Su Yu looked around his surroundings. When he reached the end of the street, he threw the token away. After which, he removed his disguise and disappeared. After 2 hours, the old man was happily making an inventory of the components of the fire dragon. Bang! His door was kicked open and 20 murderous-looking black-armored soldiers who had all achieved the frightening realm of level 5 dashed into the compound. They stood at both sides of the doors respectively, as though they were welcoming a person with very high status. On the chest of the black-armored soldiers, there was a totem of a hawk carved on each one of them. Only people belonging to the imperial family possessed this totem, it was their symbol. Moreover, in the Shanyu prefecture, there was only one person authorized to bestow the totem onto the armors of the soldiers, Duke Shanyu. He was the most powerful person in the Shanyu prefecture. After the respectful welcome of the black-armored soldiers, a handsome and dignified man with a gloomy expression entered the compound with his hands clasped behind his back. He saw the scarlet snakeskin on the floor. Is this it? A middle-aged man tilted his head and looked at the purple-shirted young lady behind him. Beside the young lady, a beautiful lady wearing a light yellow dress had hazy eyes full of tears to the extent that they were red and swollen. She kept on sobbing, as though she had experienced a great grievance. Having heard what the middle-aged man had said, the beautiful lady took the lead and looked. At the same time, she started to cry again, angry and embarrassed. This is it. As expected, that scum had brought the materials to the black market to sell them. Who sold this to you? Where is the guy? The middle-aged man gave off a powerful and frightening vibe, intimidating the old man with the smoking pipe and causing his face to turn pale. The old man's knees turned soft. His eyes were filled with fear and shock. He got on his knees and groveled repeatedly, Duke, please forgive me. A commoner like me didn't know that these materials' origins were connected to your people. I deserve to die, I deserve to die. The middle-aged man clasped his hands behind his back and stood up. His face was calm, but his eyes were burning with anger. Answer me. Who sold this to you? Where is the guy? The old man said, it was a young man, he put on a disguise, hence I could not get a good look. Suddenly, the trembling old man remembered something. As though he had found his last hope, he said, oh yes, I gave him a token. Perhaps, he had gone to Dongolin artisan shop to make his armor. The old man was quick-witted, he knew that he was smart to give Su Yu that token. Investigate the Dongolin artisan shop now. Bring this old man away and continue to interrogate him. Duke Shanyu's eyes were burning with extreme anger. When his daughter was unconscious, she was taken advantage of. As her father, how could he not be angry? He understood that the guy who saved his daughter had good intentions. However, to his daughter, this was a matter of chastity and he needed to capture the man to give his daughter an explanation. The black-armored soldiers marched mightily towards the Dongolin artisan shop and did a thorough investigation. Duke, no one has come here before. One of his soldiers gave him a report. In no time, another soldier was holding a token. Duke, this token was found at the corner of an alley. The guy must have been very cautious and threw this token away. Duke Shanyu's face turned very sour and slammed the table angrily. What a cunning kid. Firstly, he brought the materials to the black market and sold them. Even so, he did not forget to disguise himself. Next, he was crafty enough to throw away the token and not reveal himself at the Donggulan artisan shop, preventing anyone from finding out who he was when they followed the clues. This guy was very cunning, he hid himself profoundly, which made himself untraceable. As of now, there were only 2 pieces of information regarding him. Firstly, his fist and leg techniques were good. Secondly, from the prediction of the fire dragon's dead body, this guy's archery skills were top-notch and he had the ability and accuracy to hit the tip of another arrow. Go and find out who the young geniuses are who possessed excellent archery skills. Duke Shanyu stared at a distance with anger. He would not give up until the matter had been resolved. The beautiful lady was the young princess of the Shanyu prefecture. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she fiercely bit her own silver teeth. I must catch that pervert. That thief, I will bite him to death with one bite. He actually dared to do that to me. Boo-hoo, I don't want to live anymore. At a tea house close to Donggulan artisan shop, Suyu had changed into a clean and new robe that was completely different from the one he wore when he was in the mountain range. Even if Li Minghai were standing in front of him, he would still be unable to recognize Suyu. He leaned against a railing, quietly drinking his tea and secretly waiting for people to start looking for him. He wanted to know who the 2 ladies and the man were. In addition, he also wanted to know whether they had the abilities to easily find out about the old man with the smoking pipe and track him all the way to Donggulan artisan shop. From this, he could secretly find out whether he had offended someone with frightening power so that he would not need to worry about future consequences. However, he witnessed a scene which made him gasp. Duke Shanyu. Suyu's body started to tremble in fear, and his forehead was completely covered with cold sweat. That 2 ladies and the man were actually related to Duke Shanyu. To be able to alarm Duke Shanyu and him to come out personally to settle the matter, the beautiful lady who was crying had to be someone who had very close relations to Duke Shanyu. There was even a possibility that she was the princess of the Shanyu prefecture. Thinking that the person he touched was actually the daughter of Duke Shanyu, Suyu had thoughts of suicide. Suyu regretted his decision to save the beautiful lady. Be it in his past life or in his current life, anyone who saved people out of kindness might not end up with a good ending. I am done with this. It will be difficult for them to find out my identity. Hopefully they treat it as a misunderstanding. In the future, I will live in seclusion and the chances of my identity being exposed would be low. Suyu sighed and returned to the training institute. However, he did not return to his dormitory. Instead, he entered the training institute's training room. Entry to the training room was permanently free, and to a poor student like Suyu, opportunities like this were rare. However, the training room was split into different classes as well, lower class and upper class. At the upper class training room, there was a better environment and a spiritual pool. By training in the spiritual pool, the practitioner's inner strength and body would become even stronger. Sadly, there were only 10 of these rooms. Only the rumored 10 demon students as well as privileged students were allowed to use them. For poor students like Suyu, they could only gaze at them and lament at their own insignificance. Creak. It's you. What are you training? A voice that was pleasant to the ear and sounded as though it was indifferent to fame and gain could be heard. Suyu tilted his head and cupped his hands in gratitude. I have seen you before, fairy. In his mind, Suyu felt strange. Could it be that the celestial beauty was also a student of the training institute? In addition, she came out from the upper-class training room. Could she be one of the 10 demons? Or was she one of the highly privileged students? Thinking back to the longbow in her hands, he thought it might be the latter, and with such high privilege, she must be either rich or powerful. The celestial being's hair was wet, as if she had just gotten out of the shower. Her fragrance spread in bursts and her fair complexion was like a lotus after the rain, glowing and smooth. Go on in, no one is there now. The celestial being waved her hands slightly, a hint of smile in her clear eyes, as she invited Su Yu in. Su Yu was surprised. This is the upper-class training room, and I am just a silver student with no right to enter, but I appreciate your kind offer. It's all right, I'll allow it. The celestial being smiled and walked away. Su Yu was not a pompous man, so he said his thanks and swiftly entered. In the middle of the training room was a small green pond with white fumes pouring out from it, like an emerald gem. The fragrance of the celestial being lingered in the air. Su Yu got ready to take off his shirt and enter the pond. Suddenly, a gust of strong wind came from behind, so fast that Su Yu could not react. He felt his eyes blur, and it seemed like someone had taken something from the side of the pond. At a crucial moment, Su Yu activated his double eyesight and entered a sped-up time zone so that he could see everything clearly. It was the celestial being. Her face was flushed and there was a hint of shyness in her eyes. She was biting her lips slightly as she rushed in and grabbed her skirt that had been left beside the pond. It was none other than the skirt that she had just taken off but forgot to pack away. Her entrance and exit happened in a flash, and normal people would have no way of seeing it, instead just perceiving it as a gust of wind. Su Yu's expression was uncomfortable as he closed the stone door like nothing had happened. After taking off his shirt and entering the pond, Fang Yu was still in shock. The celestial being is so powerful. Her speed of light is far higher than a level that I can match. Besides having a privileged identity, is her level also very high? With doubts in mind, Su Yu entered training. Su Yu submerged his whole body inside the green pond and an indescribable sense of comfort entered every inch of his muscle. He could almost feel his body slowly improving. No wonder this is the upper-class training room. The effect is fascinating, Su Yu exclaimed to himself softly. He immediately took out his spirit elixir, coordinated it with the spirit pond, and started to train intensely. The silver student's assessment was only 3 days away. He had to hurry and upgrade his powers in order to get a higher placing. After 1 day, the secret chamber remained silent. After 2 days, there were occasional punching sounds in the chamber. After 3 days, a breeze was blowing about the chamber, as if there was a shadow floating around, with sounds of moving sleeves. Wow, the effect is amazing in the upper-class training room. Su Yu was satisfied as he felt his blood surging through his body. Under the coordination of 3 lower-class spirit elixir, 1 middle-class spirit elixir and the spirit pond, he had reached the peak of level 2. He was only an inch away from level 3. At the same time, the universal stroke had reached level 3 top tier, and his fists could continuously hit 16 times. 16 consecutive hits can be blocked by only a few people. Once the 3rd level is completed, his fists would be able to hit consecutively with no limit. Then who can block it? The cloud shadow trick also had great improvements with the completion of level 1. Su Yu could easily jump over 3 meters, his body light like a swan and graceful like a swallow. His agility and speed could be compared to a level 3 member. Brother Feng, tomorrow is the silver assessment. I wish to enter an upper-class training room. A couple approached the training room. The female possessed the beauty of Fox Fairy. Standing beside a handsome man, the Fox Fairy spoke slightly flirtatiously. Qin Feng was satisfied with the fairy's dependence but was slightly embarrassed. The martial arts training institute was extraordinary, but even he did not have the rights to own an upper-class training institute. Qing let's wait. The lights are on in this upper-class secret chamber, which means the person inside will leave once he finishes training, and then I will ask him. How about that? Qin Feng tidied his attire, believing that as the junior duke, he could convince the other party. Zhang Xueqing was happy, as she felt that as long as Qin Feng was around, anything was possible. Thinking back to her year with Su Yu, she shook her head lightly. If only she had met Qin Feng earlier and had his financial and power support, she might be a golden student now. My past self was so ignorant, Zhang Xueqing sighed to herself. Creak. The door opened, and a young man surrounded by water vapor stepped out. Qin Feng smiled lightly and extended his hand politely. Sir, I am Qin Feng, and my father is the Duke. I was wondering if you would let us borrow your secret chamber. Su Yu had just come out, and turned around upon hearing the noise. His face showed his wonderment. Oh, sorry, this is a friend's. I don't have the right to lend it, Suyu replied as he closed the stone door and walked past them. He nodded his chin slightly towards Zhang Xueqing and walked away expressionlessly. From start to finish, he did not look her in the eyes. Even as he glanced at her, he showed no sign of recognition, as though she were a stranger. The couple was stunned. Qin Feng recovered from the shock and was both surprised and angry. He was surprised that a poor kid could enter an upper-class training room that even he could not enter, and angry that he had made a request to this poor kid. Meanwhile, Zhang Xueqing was also shocked. Since when did Su Yu have the right to enter the upper-class training room? Qing no need to worry, his good days won't last long. Tomorrow is the silver assessment and I am going to show him something. Qin Feng said with a tinge of viciousness. The mention of the silver assessment caused Zhang Xueqing to gather her attention. With the support of Qin Feng, she had managed to break through level 3, and had hope of fighting for the top position with Silver King Chen Tianan. A few months from now she could even enter the ranks of the gold students and be the best of the best. As for Su Yu, with his average skills, he could break through level 2 with some luck. Even so, at most he would return home and become a senior martial arts trainer or a hunter, living a mediocre life. Compared to her, who was destined to be the top lady, they were worlds apart. Su Yu, it is not me being harsh, but you are too useless and cannot provide me with what I want. Zhang Xueqing collected her thoughts coolly, and made up her mind that the path she had chosen could not be wrong. Su Yu returned to his room, and Wu Song immediately followed him like a pug. He realized he could no longer clearly see Su Yu's details. Brother Yu, you are back. Haha, these are the challenge books you have received in the last 8 days. Wu Song said with respect as he retrieved a stack of 5 challenge books. Su Yu had suddenly risen up and defeated Chen Feng, entering the top 100 rank of silver students. Naturally, many silver students were not satisfied and wanted to challenge him. Su Yu did not care about them, except for one letter that made him raise his eyebrows. It was a challenge book written in blood. There were just a few sentences on it. On the day of the silver assessment, come on stage and face death. From the Silver King, Chen Tianan. Chen Tianan. Su Yu's expression was cold. Chen Tianan, the best of the silver students, the Silver King, the elder brother of Chen Feng, a person who had to be avenged. Su Yu had hurt Chen Feng. It was within reason for Chen Tianan to seek revenge. Wu Song watched Su Yu's expression carefully as his reminded him, Brother Yu, do you want to apply for a leave of absence from the martial arts school to avoid the Silver King? No need. Su Yu wrote his reply in ink on the challenge book. Silver King, tomorrow, protect your title. Wu Song gasped. How daring of Su Yu to be so arrogant. The next morning marked an uneasy day for the countless silver students. The silver assessment would eliminate half of the silver students that did not meet the requirements, with 5,000 people being sent home. This would mean that their martial arts journey would end and they would be marked as a commoner, either being a good hunter in a remote village or being a small instructor, leading a mediocre life. Su Yu arrived at the assessment venue early and sat quietly in the audience seats. Not many people knew him, and nobody cared about him. Look, the second and third silver powers are here. Excitement and respect could be seen in the eyes of countless silver students. 2 silver students, 1 male and 1 female, gathered in front of thousands of eyes, like shining stars that were eagerly watched. Su Yu had seen the third silver power, Shu Sen, before. 8 days ago, during his fight with gold student Li Minghao, he was knocked to the ground. His childhood sweetheart Li Qian threw away their love and abandoned Shu Sen, becoming a toy for Li Minghao so that she could have a better future. Having experienced the hardships of life, Shu Sen did not seem to be in the best condition, with an air of uneasiness. Beside him was the second silver power, Zan Lefei, who was on level 3. She had a sweet face and was all smiles, but there was a hint of slyness in her smiley eyes. Although only 14 years old, she was charming. Zan Lefei has high hopes of achieving the title of Silver King. At last year's silver assessment, she lost to Chen Tianan by 1 move. Apparently she has been training hard this past year, even breaking through to level 3. The chances do not seem great. Chen Tianan's specialty is the ghost shadow trick, which is mysterious and unpredictable, making him extremely powerful. Unless anyone can match up to this trick, it would be scarce to find a true opponent. The entrance of the two people brought about a round of cheers. After the grounds went quiet for a while, there was a sudden commotion. Look! One of the top 3 beauties, Zhang Xueqing, has appeared. And the junior Duke Qin Feng by her side. The crowd was going wild. Su Yu looked over and saw the godlike couple walking out. I'm so jealous of Zhang Xueqing. If only I had the love of the junior duke, I would be able to get the training resources. That's right. Look at Zhang Xueqing, 2 months ago she was a level 2 lower tier, now she is a level 3 lower tier. Moreover, she has the middle tier martial arts tricks from the junior duke. She is undoubtedly a dark horse in the fight for the Silver King title. Discussed two jealous girls. The two of you are dreaming. You need to have the looks. A male student at the side jeered at them. Huh, we are not bad looking, it's just that Zhang Xueqing is too beautiful, the girl was unsatisfied. The male student smirked to himself and looked towards Zhang Xueqing, unable to conceal his love, but he said regretfully, indeed, she is too beautiful. With this kind of girl, if you are together with her and you have no powerful background or skills, you will end up like Su Yu, heartlessly abandoned. Too sad. Upon hearing that, the two girls agreed, poor Su Yu, he was so infatuated. He apparently got on his knees and begged for Zhang Xueqing to come back to him, but was heartlessly rejected, and jumped into the lake. The male student said uncaringly, what's there to be sympathetic about? He does not know his place, serves him well to have his woman taken away. What I am interested in is that I heard Su Yu defeated Chen Feng. It is possible that he will meet Zhang Xueqing at the silver assessment. I really want to know Su Yu's thoughts when he is defeated by Zhang Xueqing. After all, her powers were all given to her by the man who had stolen her, so I think it will be rather humiliating. The two girls sighed, poor Su Yu, he must be trying very hard to avoid that scenario. Not sure if he can bear to take action when he meets Zhang Xueqing. The appearance of Zhang Xueqing and Qin Feng had caused a commotion in the crowd. Su Yu overheard the discussion about him, but merely smiled slightly. He had no liking for Zhang Xueqing. This kind of beautiful woman, who liked guys for their money, was easy to find on Earth. When he worked as a white-collar manager at a high-class center on Earth, there were countless women throwing themselves into his arms. What was so rare about that? Although Zhang Xueqing and Qin Feng had yet to form a romantic relationship, Su Yu believed that it would happen soon. It was merely the people in this world being more strict about romance. Su Yu closed his eyes, not bothered by the gossip. Look, Silver King Chen Tianan has appeared. A shout burst through the crowd at that moment. Su Yu immediately opened his eyes and shifted his gaze. With the audience's gaze fixed on him, a dark-skinned, vicious-looking and skinny male wearing a white robe and silver crown slowly walked through, as though he were the supreme king. With each step he took, the audience's gaze followed and moved an inch, and their heart rate increased by a beat. The Silver King, the strongest member of the Silver Students. Rumor had it that he once challenged Li Minghao, a gold student ranked 30, and only lost by one move. He became the first silver student to enter the top 30 gold ranks in the institution, and was the strongest Silver King in history. Rumor also had it that his student number plate was a hair away from becoming golden color. He was just a step away from becoming a gold student. With all the attention on him, Chen Tianan, as the Silver King, sat on the most dazzling seat on the stage. A king's seat made of pure gold, a seat designated only for the Silver King. From that seat, one can see every corner of the arena. Is that the Silver King's sister, Chen Feng, by his side? I heard both her arms were injured in a fight with a silver boy. By Chen Tianan's side was a young lady in a black robe, who was ugly and had vicious eyes. She was looking around, searching for that unforgettable enemy. Brother, he is there, Chen Feng shouted coldly. Her pupils constricted as she discovered Su Yu's presence, as though she had discovered her arch-nemesis. Su Yu did not hide, and just looked away, his face calm. She would come in the end anyway, so hiding was not a solution. Chen Tianan looked towards Su Yu, his eyes like daggers that could pierce through Su Yu, making Su Yu shudder. The strong menace that was missing in Zhan Lefei, Xu Sen and Zhang Xueqing made Su Yu's heart tremble. The students around Su Yu were merely participating in the vicious look but immediately felt uneasy, their faces turning pale. Chen Tianan, is he looking at you? Did you offend him? An obese student stammered to the tall student beside him, as his eyes shifted around. What are you talking about? He should be looking at you. The tall student stuttered, lowering his head and averting his eyes. The students nearby fidgeted their bodies uneasily, that vicious look caused quite a scare. It is just a look, how big of a deterrence could it be? Chen Tianan, with the title of the Silver King, how terrible was that? Su Yu was not afraid, and he returned a calm look, not fearing confrontation. Chen Tianan neither spoke nor threatened, but merely smiled a vicious smile. Brother, you have to avenge me. Chen Feng said bitterly. Chen Tianan took back his gaze coldly and said, don't worry. He hurt my Feng brother will end his life in the most cruel way. His voice was raspy, like two metal pieces being rubbed together, and was unpleasant to the ear. Chen Feng's lips parted to show a vicious cold smile. Her brother's skills were terrifying, and could make people become crazy. His life was over. Half an hour later, all 10,000 silver students had arrived. The 100 judging masters had also arrived. Since there would be a large number to students at the silver assessment, many masters had to be transferred over. Master Zhang, who had taught the celestial being to practice arrows, was among them on that day. Beside him was a middle-aged man in a blue robe, Zhang Zhishi. Zhang Zhishi was in a high position, holding onto the students' learning resources, and had the title of head judge. He had also achieved the scary level 4 peak. Besides that, the leaders of the institution had arrived. Among them, the most attention-grabbing was undoubtedly the vice housemaster. In the Martial Arts Training Institute, there is a housemaster and a vice housemaster, and they are the highest managers in the institute. The housemaster's powers had apparently reached the intimidating level 7, and he was an undefeatable legend-like power in the Shanyu prefecture. As for the vice housemaster, he was a terrifyingly strong figure in level 6, with only a few strong figures in the whole Shanyu prefecture worthy of being his opponent. Su Yu was sizing up this vice housemaster. Middle-aged, pure white robe, handsome, valuable powers, but he looked indifferent and cold. Su Yu had some degree of respect for him. His surname was Yi, and he was in charge of discipline matters in the institute. Any student that broke the rules would be subjected to his review and punishment, and everyone was in awe with him. He was fair, and although he was a strict person, he was not biased. Even when dealing with gold students, he showed no favoritism, thus the silver students liked and respected him. Housemaster Yi took a look at the arena and nodded slightly. Zhang Zhishi received the confirmation, looked around coldly and shouted in a deep voice, the annual silver assessment elimination competition officially starts now. Everybody will be split into teams randomly based on your student number. 10,000 people will be split into 100 teams. According to the rules, everyone will have 10 chances to be tested. If you can win 5 rounds, you will have passed the assessment. To win 5 out of 5 rounds meant that half the students would not achieve 5 rounds, thus eliminating them from the competition. Many silver students were feeling uneasy. These kind of assessments also had some element of luck. Out of the 10 rounds, if you could meet 5 weaker opponents, then the chances of staying would be very high. Of course, if luck was not on your side, and you entered the same team as the people who were ranked in the first 100, the chances of being eliminated would be very high. Following that, Zhang Zhishi mixed up the 10,000 student number plates and randomly assigned 100 teams. Su Yu's luck was neither good nor bad. In his team, there was just a silver student who was ranked 30th. Su Yu inquired and found out the student was called Li Minghai, who was at level 2 peak, comparable to himself. Minghai, brother will watch out for you, whoever dares to be ruthless to you will not be forgiven by me. A slightly familiar voice entered Su Yu's ears. Su Yu turned his head and his pupils involuntarily constricted slightly. Su Yu had seen the person who had spoken before. It was the person who had stolen Xu Sen's girlfriend and later dumped her, gold student Li Minghao. Xu Sen went to seek revenge, but ended up knocked out in the fight. His power was terrifying. However, what truly surprised Su Yu was the silver student named Ming Hai. He was a follower of the young princess of Shanyu, but had been kicked out by Su Yu that day. He turned out to be a silver student of the institute too. Su Yu felt a slight nervousness in his heart. If he were to be recognized, he would be in big trouble. Fortunately, Su Yu was alert and used his shirt to hide his face. They would soon be fighting face to face, the opponent might not be able to recognize him. Moreover, Su Yu was not the only one who learned the universal stroke technique. He would not be able to pinpoint Su Yu based on that. Feeling his gaze, Li Minghai returned the stare. There was nothing special in his look. He had apparently not recognized Su Yu as the vulgar thief that the Duke of Shanyu sought. Su Yu and his team were brought to one of the arenas, and the judge coolly announced the starting of the tests. After a few rounds, it was Su Yu's turn. Su Yu, against Zhen Liuming. Liuming was at level 2 upper tier, a tier lower than Su Yu, but was still a silver student near the top 100 ranking. You are the Su Yu who defeated Chen Feng. Liuming's face showed his readiness to fight as he said, very well. I had once written you a challenge book, which you ignored. Now is my chance to fight you. Let's fight, Su Yu said concisely as his crystalline pupils constricted. Fighting was a chance to sharpen his skills. The crystalline pupils that could increase his speed should only be used at a crucial moment. Liuming was ready to fight and he started his attack. Wolf attack, Liuming shouted deeply. The wolf attack technique was a low-class, middle-level technique, with good power and it was easy to master. His feet were full of power and he came crashing in like a giant wolf, his two fists in front of his chest like a wolf's fangs. Su Yu did not move, his eyes staring coldly, until the opponent was within a 1-meter range. He then suddenly kicked out his right leg like a leather whip, a black shadow flashing past. Continuous jade leaf kick. The continuous attacks were linked together, completed within that moment. After many days of training, continuous jade leaf kick had been trained to the top class level, its power not to be looked down upon. Liuming's body took the attack, and flew backwards like it had been knocked by multiple ships, landing outside of the arena. The judge's eyes lit up slightly. To have completed training for continuous jade leaf kick to the top class, no wonder its power was so strong. The surrounding people were attracted to this fight as well. Everyone's gaze was on Su Yu. No one was looking at him before this, but he now had all their attention. To many level 1 and even level 2 people, Su Yu was definitely a dangerous target. To have defeated a level 2 top tier with basic leg techniques is indeed terrifying.